Hello guys, can everyone hear me? Hello? Everyone hear me? Well, thank you so much for attending our workshop, Card to Crypto, powered by Worldpay. We're fully aware that we're the last workshop at the end of the day before you guys can go out. But hopefully I can get your interest for the next coming 20 minutes or so. So what is it that we're going to talk about? And I can fill the next 20 minutes about payments and what is important for you guys to take away after this session. But I really would like some input from the audience as well. Questions that you're dealing with as exchanges. And the difficulties that you face on a day-to-day basis. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. So who are we today? Myself, Jasper Goeman, working for Worldpay for a couple of years. Prior to that, worked for PayPal, so some experience in the payments industry. But supporting here today is Ewout Barink. And both of us are dedicated within the Worldpay team in EMEA, focusing solely on crypto exchanges. So any questions, please raise your hand and Ewout will come over with the microphone so you can ask your question. So for the guys that are not familiar with Worldpay, who is Worldpay and what is it that we do on a day-to-day basis? So we are by far the largest payments provider in the world, with a dominant presence in the US, in the UK, but also in the rest of the world. What is that resulting in? It's resulting in over 40 billion transactions that we process for all our merchants across the globe on an annual basis, resulting in 1.7 trillion of volume being processed by Worldpay. So it's quite a substantial volume if you compare it with our competition over there. We have 1,000 partners, over 2,500 integrations with those partners in order to enable a smooth integration, if that's required, from any type of business, whether it's in your world or in the more typical e-commerce, retail, travel or airline space. We're the number one in cross-border payments, and we have over 120 currencies that we can enable for you guys, ultimately to facilitate transactions for your end consumer. So this is a little bit about what we do on a day-to-day basis as Worldpay. But what Ewout and myself, but also our other colleagues, find out in dealing with crypto exchanges for the past couple of years is that we see a lot of similarities with the gambling and CFD Forex industry. And I think that the crypto exchanges are where the gaming industry was 10 years ago. And what did we do 10, 15 years ago as Worldpay? We made a big commitment to the gaming and gambling industry as well as the CFD Forex, resulting in all of those names that you see on this slide here, which are our trusted partners and where we make the payments for. And why do we see similarities in there between the gambling or CFD Forex merchants and the businesses that you're in nowadays? Those businesses are already heavily regulated. Yours isn't, and is about to become regulated. So that's miles apart, but what comes with regulation are things that you need to consider from AML, KYC, compliance, legislation, and all the other things. So what it typically means is complicated and it's difficult, and therefore for a lot of companies, they are afraid to start partnering or start partnering with companies like yourself. What we're doing as Worldpay, we're making a big commitment, and we went full-blown into the market, that we want to work with companies like yourself. Why? Because we like and we understand difficult business. We understand where legislation is popping up. We know how to deal with Visa and MasterCard due to our size, and we have a seat at the table. Besides those names that you see here in the gambling and CFD Forex, we already have a number of names in the crypto industry that we are processing for. The one, I guess, the long-lasting standing in our books is Coinbase, where we started for in 2013 already. But we've learned a lot from dealing with these type of companies, and in essence, what their customers want is similar to yours. Ultimately, you go to an onboarding process, you create an account, and then you exchange value to do something on their platform. For gambling, it means that you're gaming onto their platform, and ultimately, if you win some money, the funds need to be returned to the end consumer in there. When you talk about crypto exchanges, the same logic applies. There's a lot of KYC, KYB, and AML procedures that need to happen in order to onboard the customers onto your platform. And at that point, a transaction needs to be made from fiat into crypto. And this is where we come in and we can help your guys. And ultimately, if the market goes up and the people want to have some fiat back out into the system, is going the same way as for these type of businesses. So we get a lot of experience in that space. But I think the important piece, and this is the discussion that I ideally want to have, so if you have any questions, please raise your hand. But what is what we believe important for you guys if you're choosing a payments partner? And we jotted down a couple of things, which is in our opinion quite important. The first one is obviously regulation. We're processed as an acquirer for Visa and MasterCard those transactions, so you need to comply with their rule book ultimately. I don't know how to comment to that, but thank you. And another thing is obviously the banks. You need to be aware what the relationship is with the banks. And what we're hearing from the partners that we're dealing with, it's difficult from time to time. We can help you there. We have a couple of partners that can make introduction to banks if needed. One of the things that I think is hugely important is ultimately the UX for your end consumers, because they've gone through hurdles and hurdles in order to create an account onto your platform, and then ideally you want to make sure that the transaction runs through smooth, and ideally the subsequent transaction as well. So if you're creating an account for the end consumer, make sure that the financial instruments are tied to that account, so what we could refer to as an account on file. So if a consumer is returning back to your platform, that they can make a subsequent transaction, because we tokenize the financial instruments for them to make a subsequent transaction. Currencies, I touched base on this as well. We are talking about crypto. We're talking about a lot of different cryptocurrencies, but ultimately, in order to make a purchase happen onto your platform, there needs to be some kind of fiat currency moving into your platform. I'm from the Netherlands, so my line of thinking is in euros, but there are many other people that are not thinking in euros or in USD or in GBP, but they want to go onto your platform and make a transaction as well. So if you facilitate then the local currency of your end consumer, is the likelihood of a positive transaction happening on your platform, and therefore a positive UX or a good UX is highly likely to be better than if you're offering just a couple of currencies and not facilitating the rest of the world. Then another thing that you need to consider is what are the supporting payment methods. If you look at the true e-commerce as we know it for the past 30 years, you know, the 300 alternative payment methods that we can offer as Worldpay, we can offer them for those verticals or those industries. When it relates to crypto exchanges, it's different. The appetite of alternative payment methods, as we refer to them, it's not so big. So it's just a handful of alternative payment methods that you can offer. The likes of Ideal, so forth, GyroPay throughout Europe, for instance. Obviously Visa, MasterCard, if you refer to what it is that we do on a day-to-day basis. But we also have very good relationships with Samsung, with Apple, and with Google. And ultimately, behind their wallets is a credit card transaction by Visa and MasterCard using our rails over there. So what we can do, and what we already doing for a couple of our exchanges, is that we are capable to offer Apple, Google, and Samsung Pay. And if you think that the entire, let's say, population is moving into mobile devices, I would think on did you already develop an app for your business? And if you develop an app in there, what are the best payment methods to use? I would say the e-wallets like Apple or Google are by default best positioned to overcome over there. Then when you talk about proven solutions, obviously the industry what we're talking about right now is relatively long, but the payments industry is quite old already. Worldpay has over 30 years in this industry. If you're building your business, why not partner with a payments partner that knows what he or she is talking about, or what they are talking about, and that can prove that they have a certain uptime, and that they won't go down if there's a spike in traffic. So if you look at our platforms, both our acquiring platform as our gateway, the past 5 years, both of them haven't been down, which means ultimately whatever happens onto your platform, we can facilitate high growth over there. And another thing, and we can't neglect that in this space, if there's an exchange of value, then people will try to make a benefit out of it in a way that we all don't like. So fraud, how are you going to protect yourself against fraud? When you're talking about Europe, you have this thing called 3DS, which is perfectly common over here in Europe. But when you go into the US and you enforce 3D secure transactions upon your customers, there will be a huge decline and drop-off because the people are not familiar with that feature in the payments. So are you going to make sure that you protect yourself with external fraud solutions that we potentially can provide, but have that discussion with your payments partner, because it's not something that you can neglect, because then you will lose out at some point in time. So please have that conversation. Coming back to the regulation, obviously when we talk about regulation, we're thinking about upcoming regulation in Malta and Gibraltar when it relates to crypto. But there are other things, especially here in Europe, that you need to take in consideration. PSD2, so that's the Payment Service Directive set by Brussels as well as Visa and MasterCard. Think about strong customer authentication and how it would apply to your business. As well as GDPR, how you're going to protect the data of your end consumer on a day-to-day basis, and what can you share and what can't you share. And your payments provider or partner should have that conversation with you and should navigate you through this complicated landscape. I quickly touch based on what it is that we do as Worldpay and what is important. But if you look at what we do, is an integrated solution. Effectively, one API is connecting to our gateway. On the gateway, we offer the different payment methods. If it's Visa or MasterCard, we will route it to our acquiring platform. So it's our own technology with our own licenses. So it's an end-to-end solution that we provide. But if you want to have Apple, Google, or Samsung Pay being enabled, it's available via that same API on the gateway. What is hugely important, I think that's the core of our business, is security. We can't have any data breaches, because if there's a data breach, then basically it's the end of our business. So have the conversation around how you're going to protect sensitive card data, and what is your PCI appetite. PCI is a standard that you need to think about when you're processing credit card transactions, but from Visa and MasterCard. Do you have the first, the second, or the third level? And depending on your level, we can either host the payment page on behalf of yourself, or we do a direct integration, or something in the middle in there. If you start processing with any payment service provider, what they should give you is feedback on the data that they process for you, because we process your data on your behalf, meaning the data that we collect out of those transactions is effectively your data. So you can ask for that data, to have a discussion around the data. And why is the data so important to us? Based upon how you send a transaction and what you put into the transaction when you send it across to your acquirer and then ultimately to your issuer, makes all the difference between a positive accepted transaction or a negative declined transaction. And depending on the country, depending on the security mix, depending on the card type, depending on the average transaction value, and numerous other things, you can see an uplift or a decline in the transactions by the end of the day. which ultimately is resulting in a better UX or worse UX and more money in your bank account or less. That's what we're talking about. Very simple. What we do is real time, so we feed you back real time the data of the transactions that we process for you guys. I just mentioned this one integration, so it's seamless. Once you've done that, we can start processing.
Close the doors on the first day of the Barcelona Trading Conference. We're very impressed with all of the speakers in both the main speaker hall and the workshop. The doors will close at 5 p.m., giving you plenty of time to get ready for our BTC Summer Parties sponsored by our Gateway. Remember, if you haven't already, pick up your wristband right now at the info and party desk so that you can get into the best party of the night.
So guys, we still.
Until 11:30, doors at 7, and you can stay with the hoi polloi until the early morning. Again, you'll see tomorrow bright and early, with the doors open for attendees at 9 a.m. And we're looking forward to our opening address by the Vice President of Catalonia.
Okay, guys, we still have 5 minutes apparently, and I have a couple of more slides that I can show you. But are there any questions from anyone in the audience around whatever when it relates to taking payments or searching your payments partner?
Finally, I can do my job.
Thank you. So guys, what the MCC do you use for the crypto exchanges?
6051.
6051. Thank you so much.
Did everybody understand what that means?
So when you talk about Visa and MasterCard transaction, they bundle all the different industries into different categories. That's the MCC, so that's the merchant category code. And since 1.5, 2 years, they defined a separate MCC solely for crypto purchases, which is called 6051. So it's always 4 digits, and for crypto exchanges, it's always 6051, and it's the only industry that's allowed on this MCC. Any other questions? Hey, Wout.
I have a question on the open banking PSD2 thing. In the Netherlands, you have Ideal, of course, it's really convenient and efficient. Is Worldpay working on something that you can also pay in a similar manner for other European countries with open banking?
Yeah, so a couple of things here. First thing, the Ideal, that's the local payment method in the Netherlands, guys, for who's not aware. And it's a scheme set up by the Dutch banks. And it's an instant consumer-driven and initiated transaction where there's no liability and risk for the end merchant in there. Beautiful system, but when you ask banks to cooperate and to make it happen outside of their own country, they couldn't work together, so it's only available in the Netherlands. And when you're asking around PSD2, one of the interesting things around PSD2, that a couple of those things that would be enforced from September onwards will be postponed with 12 months. That's the latest news that we're having, but this is about strong customer authentication when it relates in the transaction and the associated fees and the fraud ratios in there. Then when you talk about open banking, and this is a beautiful thing, that we're working together with an external technology provider, because obviously we want to build stuff ourselves, but you can't build all the stuff yourself. So we've chosen a technology provider that will white label their solution to ours, and in this half year we will let you know, or the market know, what it would mean when we launch the product for our customers. When it relates to the specific, obviously, vertical that we're in, from a technology point of view, there's no issue in partnering here and make those open banking transactions available. We will support it because we're feeling comfortable around it. The only thing that we can't control is what the appetite for the banks is. So if there are certain banks that feel uncomfortable around providing this to the end consumers effectively via us, yeah, that's out of our control, but we will provide it, and will be, I guess, end of Q3 that we will launch this product. Any other questions? Anyone?
Yes, I have a question. The presentation is card to crypto, but aren't you forgetting a very important topic?
So First of all, anyone that's interested in the presentation, please leave your contact details either by Ewout and myself, and we're happy to share this presentation with all of you guys so that you can read it back, because we can't touch base on all the slides here. I think the most important piece is where we started is getting fiat money into the system in order for consumers to purchase crypto. And we very recently got sign off by all our internal stakeholders that as of 4 weeks from now, we will have our first launching customer, and they will come out with a service that we call payouts. So then you have what I just referred to for the gambling industry. You have pay-in. The consumer earns something on the gaming platform and wants the earning back out of the system, back onto the bank account. Well, we can offer this same service right now to the exchanges as well. So we provide the service to get the fiat money into your system, for fiat to be converted to crypto. But at some point in time, if anyone wants to convert crypto back to fiat, we can send it back to the end consumer. We have two options for this. One is called bank out. For the bank out, is the only issue that we have is that we need to convince all our banking partners to facilitate the international global network that we have, which is more than 70 banks that we use for this. So you can see where our challenge is. One of the things that we're doing as Worldpay is educating the market as well. But the other piece is a service what's being referred to right now as Visa Direct. Visa Direct is an instant payment back to the card holder. Within 30 minutes, the funds will be onto their card so they can spend it. Visa is now rolling out this product globally, so this means they will go country by country, which means it's not available in all countries yet. But their former product is called OCT, and that's an abbreviation of Original Credit Transfer, which is the Visa equivalent, and then you have PTs, what is the MasterCard equivalent, which can be serviced in most of the countries.
Yeah, last question, and then we go to the best party ever in Barcelona.
Okay, if our planet
Sorry?
was only one Bitcoin,
Yeah.
how you invest your money in our planet?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
If we have our planet all will be only one Bitcoin,
Yeah.
how you protect, how you put money in one Bitcoin?
How I would put money in one Bitcoin?
Yeah, because if our whole planet
Yeah.
will be like one Bitcoin, you can imagine.
No, I can't. I don't really understand your
So,
question.
Yeah, if everybody put money,
Yeah.
invest in one Bitcoin,
Yeah.
it will be our planet,
Yeah.
Earth. How you invest to protect our planet?
How we will protect
Yeah.
our planet as
Yeah.
Worldpay.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
How you put money? How you invest the money to protect our planet?
That's a very good question. Let's take that one away for the bar.
Yeah.
I don't have a response for that one, but thank you so much. Any last questions?
On Visa Direct, is there a need to be attached to the input of the acquisition, or can just be a single exit flow? So for example, I have a new user on my exchange who brought this crypto from outside of the exchange, depositing on the system, and now he's cashing out.
So no, there are pretty, so as always in the payments industry, for the product for Visa Direct, obviously we need to comply with the Visa regulation and whatever they enforce upon us, first and foremost. Second of all, we need to protect ourselves and understand what the initial source of funds is and where whatever cryptocurrency has been. So we're using a couple of tools that we can detect where the coins have been, and if we feel comfortable around it, we can support the payout. If we don't feel comfortable around it, we can't and we won't support the payout. But when we're talking about starting this and launching this as we do, we're talking about consumers that actually purchased using their card on a platform that we trust, and then want to have the earnings removed from that platform as well. So there needs to be an original incoming transaction for us to feel comfortable to support an outgoing transaction. So this product can't be used as a standalone service.
So the question is if you can do the risk analysis on the original blockchain transaction itself also, not only on the card.
In theory, I fully agree what you're saying, but you don't want to know the battles that we've fought internally with all the departments in order to get this happening. So we are very glad that we can offer it, but I foresee that in the future, when we get more familiar in the industry, when we feel more comfortable about the tools that can guide us, that we can potentially support this. But this won't be in the next 12 months.
Okay, finally, on the Visa Direct thing, should it be the same Visa card? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Interesting. Does it need to be a credit card?
Debit or credit card.
Okay.
But I think the important thing here, and that's when we refer to one of the slides earlier, when we're talking about the 8 things that we put on there, which I feel are important for you guys to understand, is fraud prevention as well as the correct setup. When I said the correct setup, I was referring to whatever the integration is in there, but also you create an account of an end consumer. The end consumer is putting their financial instruments into your account, whether we're hosting the sensitive data or yourself, besides the point. But from my perspective, if I would be an exchange and start offering credit cards, I would only have 1, maybe 2 credit cards associated to the accounts being created onto your platform for a subsequent transaction. Because my feeling is that if someone lists down 10 credit cards and is going to purchase on 10 credit cards on your platform, you might want to second whether that's trustworthy transactions in itself. So if you have only 1 or 2 initial credit cards for the incoming payments, the outgoing payment will also go to that same card. See what I mean? Time for drinks, guys. Thank you so much for your time. If you want to see the presentation to be sent across into your inbox, either by Ewout or myself, just hand out your cards and we'll make sure that tomorrow we'll find a half an hour to send out all the emails. Cheers.